if you're involved in transportation at all, you know that ice, snow, and rain are just,
Yeah.
they're always your enemies.
Oh, always.
But for aircraft, when we start talking about high altitudes and, the physics of the atmosphere, that threat just takes on this whole terrifying new dimension.
It absolutely does. We're talking about something called supercooled water droplets.
Okay.
So imagine water that's well below freezing, say, -10 Celsius, but it's still completely liquid.
How is that possible?
It's held in that state just by surface tension. And the moment those droplets hit the leading edge of a wing or a probe, or anything really,
That disturbance.
that disturbance shatters the tension and they freeze instantly. And that right there is the fundamental problem of in-flight icing.
And today, that's our whole mission. We're going to deep dive into this battle, focusing specifically on Airframe Chapter 15, ice and rain protection. We'll get into the hazards and then really dissect the system's thermal, pneumatic, chemical, all of it.
And for you, the AMT student listening, this stuff is non-negotiable. Knowing the specs is one thing, but really understanding the failure modes, the maintenance checks for these high-pressure, high-heat systems, that's the whole ballgame.
Right.
We're going to show you why a little leak in a duct can be just as critical as a structural failure.
Let's start with those hazards then, because not all in-flight ice is created equal, right?
Not at all. And from a maintenance perspective, you have to know the difference between clear ice and rime ice. It explains everything about why certain systems are used.
So what's the core difference?
It really comes down to droplet size and temperature, clear ice that forms when you fly through large water drops. Think rain or those big puffy cumulus clouds.
Okay, the big wet ones.
Exactly. Because the droplets are large, they don't freeze instantly. They actually flow back over the wing surface for a moment before they gradually freeze.
And that creates a sheet.
A smooth, dense, heavy, and really tenacious sheet of ice.
And that word, tenacious. That's what makes it so dangerous, isn't it? It just adheres so perfectly to the wing.
Perfectly. It is so hard to remove. And because it flows, it can actually accumulate behind the protected area of the leading edge.
Oh, wow. So you might be heating the front of the wing, but this ridge is forming just behind the hot zone.
That's the deadly part, yes.
Okay, so now contrast that with rime ice.
Rime is pretty much the opposite. It forms from very, very small water drops, like in stratus clouds or just light drizzle.
And these freeze on impact.
Instantly. They freeze so fast they trap air inside. And that's what gives it that classic white, milky, opaque look.
And it's really irregular in shape.
Highly irregular. It's lighter than clear ice, but that roughness, that jagged texture is just devastating to the airfoil.
So aerodynamically, is rime ice sometimes even more dangerous than the heavier clear ice?
Oh, absolutely. That roughness immediately trips up the smooth airflow over the wing, it disrupts the boundary layer, and you get the severe decrease in lift.
A massive one.
A massive one, and a huge increase in drag. Now, it's easier to break off because it's brittle, but that initial accumulation is just a performance killer.
And we should probably mention mixed icing too, which is sort of the worst of both worlds.
Right, where you get that rough shape, but with the density of clear ice. And, regardless of the type, the cumulative effect is what gets you.
It's not just one thing.
No. It's the airfoil malformation, which kills your lift and increases drag, but then it's also the performance deterioration.
Your fuel burn goes up, climb rate goes down.
And critically, your stall speed increases. A plane that normally stalls at, say, 100 knots might now stall at 115. That means the crew has to fly faster on approach just to stay safe.
And there's another risk that might not be as obvious, FOD, foreign object damage.
That is so vital, especially for jets. When big sheets of ice break off, they become ice missiles. And if a chunk of that gets ingested into a turbine engine, you're looking at a compressor stall, a surge, or, catastrophic failure. It's a huge concern for aft-mounted engines, but even wing-mounted engines are at risk.
Okay, so that sets the stage. Now let's get into the toolbox, the systems. And I think we have to draw a line in the sand first. Are we preventing ice or are we removing it? Anti-ice versus de-ice.
It's a fundamental strategic difference. Anti-icing is proactive. It's equipment you have to turn on before you enter icing conditions.
You're stopping it from ever forming.
Exactly. You're heating the surface to keep it dry, or maybe just hot enough that the water runs off before it can freeze. We call that running wet.
And de-icing is the opposite. It's reactive.
Totally reactive. De-icing equipment is designed to be used after ice has already started to build up. The classic example is the pneumatic boot. It actually needs a layer of ice to form so it has something to crack off.
And when we're talking about what needs protection, the list is long. For anyone studying for their airframe ticket, it's comprehensive.
Oh, yeah. Wing and stabilizer, leading edges, obviously. Engine cowls, props, spinners, and all the air data probes.
Pitot, AOA, TAT. If those ice up, your instruments are lying to you.
And then there's the stuff you might forget. The flight deck windows, antennas, and all the plumbing. Water lines, waste lines. If those freeze, you've got a big problem.
So to handle all that, we basically have four main methods: hot air, electric heat, those inflatable boots, and then chemical application.
That's the toolkit.
Let's dive into the biggest one first. Thermal pneumatic anti-icing, WAI.
The workhorse.
Yeah, the workhorse. So this system uses incredibly hot air. Where's it getting it from?
On most modern turbine aircraft, it's coming directly from the engine compressor. It's called bleed air. It's very hot, and it's under very high pressure.
And this air can be hundreds and hundreds of degrees. How do you pump that through a wing without, melting it?
That's where the engineering gets really cool, and it's essential for an AMT to understand. The air is routed through special ducting, and then it's distributed along the leading edge using what are called piccolo tubes.
A piccolo tube. That's a great visual.
It really is. Think of like a garden hose with little holes drilled in it, spraying that hot air all over the inner skin of the leading edge.
Okay.
But crucially, on bigger jets, they use ejectors. These mix fresh ambient air in with the super hot bleed air.
So that's to cool it down.
It does cool it, yes, but more importantly, it increases the total mass airflow. You need a high volume of air moving through there to transfer heat evenly and quickly across the whole wing. It prevents any cold spots from forming.
That mass airflow point is key. It's about efficiency. So from a maintenance perspective, we're looking at this ducting. What are the big inspection items?
You're checking for security, first of all,
Good.
then distortion from all the heat cycles. And leaks. Leaks are a huge deal.
You can probably hear them, right? High pressure air.
A lot of times you can, yeah. If not, soap and water is your best friend. A leak doesn't just reduce effectiveness, it can cause heat damage to the structure or wiring around it.
And what about the insulation lagging on those ducts?
Meticulous inspection. It's vital for heat retention, but you have to check it for contamination. If you find oil, hydraulic fluid, anything flammable soaked into that fiberglass lagging,
It's a fire hazard.
a massive fire hazard. That lagging has to be replaced immediately, no questions asked.
Now this is where it gets really complex. Modern planes use a computer to manage all this, the ACIPS. What's its main job?
The ACOTS, or the Aircraft Icing Protection System computer, its primary job with the wing anti-ice is to enforce symmetrical heating.
Meaning both wings have to be heated equally.
Exactly. Imagine if one wing is hot and cleaned and the other is cold and covered in ice. You create this huge, dangerous imbalance in lift and drag.
So asymmetry is actually considered a bigger threat than just having no anti-ice at all.
Absolutely. And the system's failure logic proves it. If the ACIPS sees a valve fail closed on one wing, meaning it can't get heat,
What does it do?
it will intentionally close the valve on the other wing. It decides it's safer to fly with two iced-up wings than with one.
Wow, that's incredible safety logic right there.
Yeah.
It's also programmed not to run when it shouldn't, right? Like on the ground.
Correct. For safety, the system is inhibited on the ground unless you're running a specific maintenance test. It's also inhibited if the outside air temp is too high, like above 50 degrees Fahrenheit, right after takeoff.
Okay, let's shift gears to electricity. Thermal electric systems. The big limitation here is the power draw, right?
Precisely. You just can't heat an entire wing with electricity. The amperage required would be insane.
So we save it for smaller critical things.
Exactly. The air data probes, pitot tubes, AOA vanes, and of course the flight deck windows, they have a conductive film layered in the glass that heats up.
And that pitot heat element, that's a huge safety item for an AMT on the ground.
A critical safety point. That little element is designed to work at 500 miles an hour at minus 50 degrees.
So on the ground with no airflow.
It gets incredibly hot. Hot enough to cause severe burns instantly. You never ever touch it. The only safe way to check it is to watch the ammeter or the load meter. You confirm it's drawing current. That's the check.
Okay, moving on to chemical systems. The famous weeping wings, the TKS system.
The TKS system is just brilliant. It uses a glycol-based fluid, and it pumps it out through these porous titanium panels on the leading edges.
And these panels have tiny laser-drilled holes in them.
Thousands of them. The fluid seeps out, coats the wing, and mixes with the water, depressing its freezing point so ice can't even form.
What's so interesting is that it's both an anti-ice and a de-ice system.
It has that dual capability. If you turn it on after ice has already formed, the fluid gets underneath and breaks the chemical bond between the ice and the skin.
And then the wind just peels it away.
Aerodynamic forces just peel it right off, and then the system immediately transitions into its anti-ice role.
What's the main limitation?
It's the reservoir. You only have so much fluid on board, usually only about 1 to 2 hours worth. So for maintenance, the pre-flight check to make sure it's full is absolutely critical.
Okay, system number 3, pneumatic de-icing boots. This is purely a de-icing method.
Right. It's the classic black rubber boot on the leading edge. Its job is simple. Inflate and break the ice.
And it happens fast, right?
Very fast. Inflates in about 6 to 8 seconds, cracks the ice, and then a vacuum system sucks it flat again to restore the airfoil shape. That vacuum part is just as important as the inflation.
And where does the air for this come from? It's different for different engines.
It is. On a lot of recip planes, you have an engine-driven air pump. And this pump does double duty. The pressure side inflates the boots.
And the suction side.
The suction side pulls the boots flat, and it runs the gyroscopic instruments, like the attitude indicator.
This is where we hear about dry pumps versus wet pumps.
Right. A wet pump is lubricated by engine oil, so you need an oil separator. A dry pump uses self-lubricating carbon vanes.
And the warning for AMTs there.
Keep a dry pump dry. A single drop of oil or solvent will destroy those carbon vanes in a heartbeat.
Now, since we talked about symmetry being so important, how do these boot systems manage that? They don't just inflate everything at once.
No, that would be a huge aerodynamic disturbance. They use distributor valves and timers to cycle the boots in sections and symmetrically.
So like the outboard right wing, then the outboard left wing.
Exactly. Then the inboard right, then the inboard left. It minimizes the disruption so the pilot can maintain control.
And the boots themselves, they're made of conductive neoprene. Why conductive?
That's to dissipate static electricity. An airplane builds up a huge static charge flying through the air. If the boots weren't conductive, that charge could build up and then arc through the metal skin, causing all kinds of radio noise and interference.
It just bleeds it off safely.
Bleeds it off slowly and safely.
Okay, let's pivot quickly to the ground. Pre-flight. The FAA is very clear on this.
No ambiguity at all. Critical surfaces have to be completely clean of any frozen contaminants before takeoff, period.
And we do that with de-icing fluids. The color coding is key here.
It is. Type I is that orange stuff. It's for de-icing. Then you have the thicker anti-icing fluids, type 2 and type 4, which is the green stuff you see a lot.
And that introduces the idea of holdover time, HIT.
Holdover time is your clock. It's the estimated time the fluid will protect the aircraft from more ice forming. That clock starts ticking the second they start spraying.
And when it expires, you go or you go back.
You take off or you go back to the gate for another round. There's no fudging it.
And for the ground crew, there are critical areas to avoid spraying, right?
Oh, absolutely. Never spray directly on brakes, electrical components, or the air data probes. And a big one is the cockpit and cabin windows.
Why not the windows?
The chemicals can cause the acrylic to craze or crack over time. It can damage the seals. You have to be very careful.
And finally, rain. Wipers have their limits at high speed.
They do. They can streak or even lift right off the windshield.
So what's the modern solution?
2 main things. One is hydrophobic coatings. It's a special chemical treatment that makes water bead up and roll right off.
So you barely even need the wipers.
Barely. The other solution on some big jets is pneumatic rain removal. It's a jet blast of hot bleed air directed over the windshield. It just blasts the water away and prevents any refreezing.
This has been an incredible deep dive. We started with the physics of clear and rime ice, and we really dissected the 3 main defense strategies: thermal, chemical, and pneumatic.
And the real takeaway for the AMT student is that this is systems integration at its most vital. A tiny crack in a de-icer boot, a leaky WAI duct. That's not just a failed part. It means the aircraft is now flying with compromised aerodynamics.
It could be outside its certification envelope.
Exactly. Your inspection is literally the firewall.
So as you keep studying these systems, think about that complexity we discussed with the ACIPS computer. It's inhibited on the ground. So here's a thought. What happens if the weight on wheel sensor fails? It tells the computer the plane is in the air, but it's really sitting on the ramp. What kind of cascade failure could that false signal cause? And what does that tell you about how much these systems depend on accurate sensor data?
Every single component plays a critical role in the big picture.
Indeed. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.